Welcome to the Dynamics of Everyday Life, where we demystify some tricky concepts and get to know ourselves a little bit better. Welcome back to the show, everyone. Have you ever noticed that there are an awful lot of clinical sounding terms that are being bandied around, but when you actually go to look them up, they aren't really a diagnosis? Or is that just me? I mean, very possibly it's just me. I like to know what I'm talking about, and especially if I'm going to be talking about something on my podcast or in a post that I write, I want to make sure that I'm as correct and as factual as I can be. Now, that's not to say I don't make mistakes, I'm not perfect, but I will have tried to iron out any creases. Anyway, the reason that I mention this is that this week I've been interested in rejection sensitivity dysphoria. And I thought to myself, you know what, this would make an excellent podcast topic. It's a term that's discussed and it's used a lot these days, especially in relation to ADHD. And I started to wonder, how many of us have experienced similar feelings? So, my first port of call was to do a little bit of research. Now, it turns out that RSD is not listed in the DSM. Now, the DSM is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. It's basically the clinical handbook used to diagnose mental health conditions, and it's widely used in psychiatry and psychology. So RSD is not there, but it is actually pretty well known. It's talked about a lot. It's almost an added bonus to a lot of conditions that are in the DSM. And I would think of RSD as much more as a descriptive term. Now, RSD isn't going to apply to everyone. Not everyone listening to this is going to recognise themselves in this. However, for a lot of people, you will absolutely know those moments. Maybe you ruminate a lot after interactions. Did I say the right thing? Were they looking bored? Was I too much? What even is too much? Do you plan conversations way in advance, hoping to strike the right tone? Do you hover over the send button when thinking about a message or an email, and you're worried about how the other person will receive it? And then, even when you do send it, you're pacing about the room thinking, why haven't they responded to me? Maybe they don't like me. Maybe they've seen parts of me that I try to keep hidden, and now that they've seen that part of me, they can see what a terrible human being I am, and they're never going to speak to me again. Even though it's only been 10 minutes and they very probably haven't seen it yet. There's an awful lot of catastrophising that goes on with RSD, and when you're in the grips of it, you can feel like you constantly need reassurance. But for those of you who've listened to a previous episode, There's a Hole in My Bucket, Dear Liza, where we talked about elements of narcissism and how this particular bucket can't ever be filled by someone else, then neither can the RSD bucket, because that reassurance can't come from someone else. It has to be internal, which is the tricky bit. I mean, it doesn't mean to say that you can't get support from other people. Far from it. You absolutely can. But they can't fix it for you. So, what's going on from a psychodynamic perspective? There's a lot in here. First of all, it can stem from primary caregivers. I mean, mostly parents, but not necessarily. And we're thinking about those primary caregivers who were critical, unpredictable, rejecting of your feelings and who you are, who you were as a person. And it's one place where the superego comes out to play. Now, a quick recap of the superego for new listeners from a Freudian perspective, and I'm always going to start with Freud so that you know what the foundations are. The superego is the part of our mind where we've internalised the harsh critical voices. It's like our moral conscience, but it's more than that. So if you're carrying these punishing inner voices and you perceive that you've done something wrong or that someone doesn't like you, then guess what? That feeling of rejection is going to come hurtling back every time something happens that sparks that memory. the superego is going to assert its control before any other part of your mind can get a look in. And this feels like a familiar place to be. It's a very counterintuitive situation. We feel safe feeling like this because we know it, even though it's incredibly uncomfortable and painful for us. And from this, we can see where our defence mechanisms are going to start creeping in. We've talked about splitting before, where we can see people as either all good or all bad. And if we perceive someone as having rejected us, whether they have or not, I mean, they might be in a meeting or busy doing something else instead of looking at their messages, then it's a lot safer for us to decide that they're all bad, because then we can lay the blame at their door, and we don't have to look at the nuances in relationships. The other thing to think about is other people aren't robots either. I mean, we're not robots and neither are other people. They have their ebbs and flows in their moods too. And not everything is about us. But we can make it about us, and not in a good way either. We've also got the potential for a couple of our old favourites, projection and projective identification. This is where we can imagine something happening so strongly we can either provoke it, so it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, or believe that it's happening with very little evidence, if any at all. I mean, when you think about it, we can create stories in our minds that would rival Sunday Times bestsellers. So, what do we do about this? First of all, we're back with another old friend, awareness, because we can't do anything about anything unless we're aware of it. And awareness is a great start. But let's also think about the action that we can take. It's important to recognise that this is a pattern of behaviour. It hasn't just come from nowhere. It can feel like it crashes down on you, a bit like a tidal wave, and you're engulfed in feelings that you weren't expecting at all. These aren't random. When you start to consider your psychological makeup, you might start to discover some very clear reasons for this. The next step is to accept these feelings as part of you. The inclination can be to want to squish them away, to pretend they aren't happening to you. That's not going to help, because if you squish these into the unconscious, they are just going to bounce right back out at you at another time, probably when you least expect it. And when you're in that heightened state of feeling, the other thing to remember is it's often not the best time to make decisions, especially far-reaching ones, much as you might want to at the time. You know, we've all wanted to slam the door and go, never, that's it, you're done, we're done, I will never consider you in my life again. Possibly not the best time to do this. Try and ride the tidal wave instead of allowing it to drown you. And you know, I get that that's easier said than done maybe, but practice always helps, as does talking to someone. Now, that might be a coach or a therapist, but maybe it's your friend who knows you and loves you whatever happens, however you are, whatever mood you're in, they love you unequivocally. Now, my beloved friend Steve was fabulous at this. I could be creating all kinds of narratives about myself, other people, what might be happening, and he could make everything better with just a sentence. Now, he was most likely pointing out someone else's fashion faux pas, one such classic being, he's a vision in grey, Marl. But what it does is it makes me stop in my tracks, which is often all that's needed. You know, stopping in your tracks, laughing about something. It can help you start to see something a bit more objectively. My invitation for you this week is for you to consider where in your life you might be experiencing some form of rejection and how true this is. Can you actually be sure that you're being rejected? Or is it maybe a familiar pattern that's playing out for you? And what do you see when you look at the situation dispassionately? Or even, can you see it dispassionately? would it be helpful to talk to someone else about this? I mean, really don't think that you're alone in these responses. It's a well-known phenomena for a reason, because it happens to a lot of people. And, as always, give yourself some grace. These feelings and responses have been with us for a long time, often decades, so we might not be able to navigate them exactly the way we want to the first time around. Before we close, I want to share with you a couple of things that are coming up. In early September actually, I'm doing a webinar with Scott Warren around our defence mechanisms that come into play when we're thinking about pricing. This is always a tricky topic for us coaches. Definitely worth coming along to that if you're a coach and you are struggling with how to set your prices. And also my course, Essential Psychodynamics for Coaches. We start again in September. I absolutely loved the first round. It was fantastic. I had a fabulous group of coaches. There was lots of learning, lots of discussions. Already got people joining up now. So if you don't want to miss out, come and join us and, have some psychodynamic fun. Send me a DM, send me an email, and we can have a chat. Looking at ourselves at this level can be challenging and unnerving as we develop our awareness. So I'd always encourage that you do this at your own speed. If you feel you need some extra help around this, then I've put together a PDF resource sheet, and you can find the link for this in the show notes. If you'd like to have a chat with me about psychodynamics, or whether I'm the right coach, supervisor, trainer or mentor for you, then click on the link that's also in the show notes. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Dynamics of Everyday Life. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. As well as producing this podcast, The Dynamics of Everyday Life has lots more psychodynamic fun going on, and you can find out more at dynamicsofeveryday.life.